My approach to this beginners thing is going to be a little bit different than what you might be used to. Most people come up and will do a demo and show you how to style a tree and do all that kind of stuff. The problem with most of the demonstrations is this. The person doing the demonstration never bothers to tell you that he took great pains and time to locate a tree that would make him look good while he did the demonstration. Okay? And that's the part that the people out here always miss on. Okay? They always miss out on that portion of it. About 2 years ago, I started teaching. There was a lack of teachers in Orange County. There weren't people that wanted to take on the beginner, so to speak. You know, the beginner, most people feel that beginners are a problem. They're a challenge, not a problem. Okay? And unfortunately, most beginners start off with information that they gather either at club meetings or whatever, or they go to, demonstrations that are held at arboretums or wherever the case might be, and they feel that they need to do certain things, and 9 times out of 10 what they do is probably wrong, or they've misspent their money in the process of doing that. All right? So it suddenly dawned on me that, you know, students need some kind of direction in what they're going to do. So the next group of people that I brought along, the first class was, we went shopping. Okay? I took them to several, I scouted out nurseries down in our area. I took them to several nurseries and showed them, okay, this is what you're looking for. This is what's important in material. And this is the part that when you get a demonstration, 9 times out of 10, you don't get. Okay? They don't talk about, and this is a tree that I love Feminas, and Feminas are my favorite for starting people off as students. If you're starting out, extremely hardy material, fast-growing material. It's very rewarding, and if you get a formal upright, if you go through it and you have a good instructor, you're going to go through all of the basic techniques that you're going to use throughout your entire time as you're doing bonsai, okay? And formal upright is what all of us from before, and I'm sure Leela as well, you can probably remember, that was the tree that our instructors, when we first went to them, said, you get yourself a formal upright, you bring it back, and then we'll start with it, because that was the training. That was the training ground. So this is basically what it is, and this is the demo tree, okay, and it's done. I am not going to do any wiring on it. Hopefully somebody that gets it can finish doing some wiring and stuff. It's been trimmed up. It has been styled. I did eliminate branches over a period of time. It was wired at one time, and it has basically 2 fronts, and I'm going to talk about that. So this will be a live front if you want a live apex, and if you want a dead apex, there's turn it around, and you have the dead apex. Okay. Now, here's the thing about buying stuff. These days, when you go to a nursery, believe me, I would not recommend you look at anything less than a 7-gallon container, and that's kind of iffy sometimes. I would go to 15-gallon, all right? If you hunt around, you'll find them at a fairly reasonable price. A lot of the nurseries that I take my people to, we can find, like this is a 7-gallon, $19. It's a nice tree. 15 gallons usually run about $45 to $50 for a femina, and a lot of other types of materials we can get them for $40 to $50 as well, and very, very nice material. Okay, so if you shop around and look around, you'll find the stuff. All right, if you go to some place that says bonsai nursery, you're going to pay 3 times as much. So you want to go to the nurseries that are like, you know, the wholesale nurseries or the guys that are under the power lines, things like that. You'll find some good stuff. You just got to look. You know, you do have to look around. And hopefully, you know, your teacher will explain to you what it is you're looking for. Okay, He's not here tonight, but Mel Akita, when I first started out, one of the things that, in a discussion one time that I had in one of my classes, I used to take lessons, I started with Harry Harrao. He was not my very first instructor, but he was the one that he was my first instructor that I worked with for the longest time. And Mel, one time we were sitting around talking, and, he kind of put the whole tree thing into proper perspective for me real quick with a short, brief statement. And he says, your tree is the first 4 to 6 inches. I'm sitting there going, what do you mean my tree is the first 4 to 6 inches? The first 4 to 6 inches of the tree are the absolute most important part of the tree. That's your base, okay? And that's the part of the tree that's most important, okay, is that base and that lower trunk going into the base. In other words, do the roots have a nice flare? Do they come up and form into the trunk nicely and cause a nice flow? When I say flow, visually, does it look pleasing to you and that it tapers up and flows up, okay? Don't buy the foliage. The foliage is a nice thing to have, and you do with evergreens, and you do need to look at that, seriously, but it's not the most important thing. This part of the tree you build, okay? This is the easiest part of the tree to build. This is the most difficult part of the tree to build because this either has to be done in the ground for a long period of time, or you've gotten it from a nursery and it's gone from one container to the other container. It's probably had some time with the roots growing in the ground out of the container and has caused this nice base to occur. Like I said, this was a 7-gallon. There was about a dozen of them at this one nursery that I went to. They were all very nice. I got a good price on them, so I got them for things like this, and sometimes for students that need somebody to to help them out a little bit. So that kind of a thing. But these are very, very nice, and this is the kind of thing that you don't get. That is probably 90% of the time nobody even talks about in a demonstration. Okay. Once you leave this base, like I said, this can be built. This next little part that I want to talk about has to do with the teacher and the student. All right. This article was written by Roberta Walters back in 2008. At that time, she was the secretary for GSBF. And that was during the time that Ted Mattson was president of GSBF. Anyway, it's a really nice article, and I've got some copies here, and anybody is more than welcome to take a copy of it. But the thing that I like about it, it does explain, and I think it does a very good job of talking about the relationship between student and teacher. Okay? Everybody feels that the teacher is responsible for providing all of the training for the student, okay, and directing the student. And that's true. But the student also has a responsibility, and that responsibility is to go out and get the proper materials and the proper equipment and come prepared to class to do what has to be done, okay? And the tools is not so hard, but the material is probably the difficult part. And that's the part that the student really has to make the effort to go out and make sure that they get the proper type of things. So you have to communicate with your instructor, make sure that your instructor understands where you're at, make sure that you understand where they're at and what the demands and what some of the requirements are for the class and where the class is going to go. So have that communication with your instructor, and at the same time, make sure that your instructor is talking to you. There's nothing worse than sitting in a room and having a one-way operation, okay? You're not going to get anywhere, and you're not going to get anywhere fast unless there's that communication back and forth, okay? So if your instructor is doing something and they're not talking to you about what's going on, tap them on the shoulder. What are you doing and why, okay? Don't be intimidated. Talk to them, okay? You need to do that. My goal when I take people on and when I start them off is to make it as pleasant as possible And part of that pleasant as possible as making it as inexpensive as possible, okay? With the understanding there is a point where, you know what, you're going to have to pay at least this much to get something decent, all right? But there's a lot of stuff out there that you can obtain by going nursery hunting, all right? The next thing, I guess we'll move along. I always like to share about various things, and one of the things that I want to talk about is, and this is for those of you who have been around for a while, okay, so this is going to kick this from beginners on up. We've had a couple of talks down at KoFu Kai, and it seems like the one thing that I keep hearing all the time is, let's see, chemical fertilizers and organic fertilizers, okay? And that's always a real good topic of conversation. It always seems to stimulate some questions and stuff. Organic fertilizers. Has anybody ever looked to see what organic means? Organic, of relating to or derived from living organisms, of relating to, yielding or involving the use of food produced with the use of feed or fertilizer of plant or animal origin without employing the chemically formulated fertilizers, growth stimulants, antibiotics, or pesticides, you know, that kind of a thing. And then it goes on here, relating to or containing carbon compounds, okay? Relating to, being dealt with, a branch of chemistry concerned with carbon compounds, living beings, and most other carbon compounds. So, are you getting anything better with an organic fertilizer? You're not, okay? And I'll tell you why, all right? I used to go to these, KoFu Kai used to do a educational exhibit at the Turf Growers Symposium, which was held at the Pomona Fairgrounds. And we did it for about 4 or 5 years in a row. And we used to be in the building with all the universities, which was like Redlands, and everybody that had an agricultural department or something like that, like Cal Powell, they were in there with us, okay? And it was always kind of fun because I'd always get these papers from these people. If I asked questions, they said, "Oh, I'll get you a paper tomorrow. You can read it on it." I'm like, okay, great. And they always have these informational talks there in the educational area. And they talked, there was just very few people that talked about the potted environment because they're commercial operations 90% of the time. So whenever you did get somebody that talked about the potted environment, it was pretty interesting, especially for me and for what we do. But the thing about the organic fertilizers is, one gentleman was talking, and they manufactured a lot of the organics, but they did say that it was interesting what they said about them. Okay, some of the things about the organics are that, one, they need a lot of UV to work. Okay, two, an organic will take anywhere from 90 days to 6 months before it will break down so that your plant can do something with it, okay? That's how long an organic will take before your plant can actually make use of it. Now, the other part about organics is if you're using these meals and you're using a lot of this stuff, remember, you're adding an additional component to your soil which can clog your soil, all right? So that deters proper aeration, the oxygen pickup and things like that. Some things you want to think about before you go start taking handfuls or scoopfuls and throwing it in there and feeling good about yourself because you're giving it something that's organic, okay? So think about that. Liquid fertilizers are interesting. Since the late 80s, okay, companies that make liquid fertilizers, which have all of the components in them that an organic would have in them, okay, have been required to, they have to sit high up in the in the soil level, okay, and they cannot last that long. Why do you think that is? Huh? They drain out. They leach into the water table, okay? And basically they got to be such a fuss over the fact of all the chemicals and everything that were in our water table that they started restricting all of these fertilizer manufacturers and saying, you know what, this is what you have to do with your products, okay? So when you're using a liquid fertilizer, you're getting the best of two worlds. One is 90% of them, if you look at them and read what's on the label, you're going to find that that's probably what's in your vitamins that you're taking, okay? Second, so they're not that bad, all right? Secondly, you know, your plant takes them up immediately, all right? If you take your plant, you water it thoroughly the day before, you come back the next day, fertilize, and follow the instructions on the containers, all right? If it says an ounce, don't stand there and go, that looks like an ounce. No, measure the ounce, okay? That's the worst thing about liquid fertilizers and why people get so upset about them. It's not the fertilizer, okay? It's the fertilizer operator, you, okay? We all got that bad habit of just going, oh, okay, that looks about right, and we do it, and we over-fertilize, all right? So water your plant thoroughly the day before, come back the following day, fertilize, let your plant sit for 24 hours to 48 hours before you water again. That plant will take up all those nutrients that fast, okay? Don't be afraid of the chemical, and here's something that everybody does is they associate a liquid with a chemical fertilizer. Fish emulsion is a liquid, okay? Now, fish emulsions, there's two kinds. There is the normal one that we're all used to, and we get it and we pour it out, and it's this ucky, gooey, brown stuff that we put in, and we mix it up with water and all that kind of stuff. That fish emulsion, which is probably the most common manufactured, which is manufactured the most common way, is cooked, okay? They take all these little fishy parts and stuff like that, throw them in a big vat, they cook them, and they cook it down to this big mess, and then they put it in, they bottle it, and they send it out, okay? There's also cold process, and there's only 2 or 3 companies out there that are doing cold process fish emulsion, okay? When you get that cold process fish emulsion, you'll smell it, you'll know it's fish emulsion, but it's almost clear, all right? It doesn't have all that icky gooey stuff, all right? It mixes up beautifully. If you're using a Siphon-X, it'll go through just great. I use a fertilizer pump or fertilizer injector, and it just feeds through that thing beautifully, okay? And it works really great. So if you have the opportunity, kind of ask if it's a cold press operation. It's a little bit more expensive, not that much. I think Neptune makes it. I think Atlas even has a cold process fertilizer, fish emulsion fertilizer as well. And I forget, there's another company out there which I don't remember the name of right offhand. But think about that, okay? It's a little bit better deal. But cold process is the deal. So anyway, that's the thing. That's my take on fertilizers, and it's something that you should think about, and don't be stuck with having all these other things that you're going to be throwing in there, because you could end up clogging up your soil. I usually don't like to recommend things because people do weird things and they come back and say to me, "Well, that didn't work. It killed my plants." Well, so I usually keep my mouth shut about things that I'm doing. But if I've been using something for a long time, I'll share, okay? The question was fertilizers. What kind of fertilizers do I use? I was introduced to the Dynagrow family about a little over 2 years ago and have been using it. And if you go to their website or if you go to a good place that supplies it, Orange County Farm Supply has it. I have a hydroponics place by the house, and they carry a full line of all kinds of stuff. But the gentleman there handed me a flow chart that Dynagrow makes. And the flow chart actually tells you when to apply various fertilizers and in what combinations, okay, of their products. So it was a really nice, handy little thing. And it also told me how to mix them. So if you had, you know, their Dynagrow Grow and your Dynagrow Protect, they say, okay, put the water in the bucket first, then put the Protect in, then put the Grow in, you know. So they are very specific about how to do it, which is really kind of nice to have that kind of information. I was telling, I use the Dynagrow Grow, I use the Dynagrow Bloom, and there's another product that they make, and it's called Protec, P-R-O-T-E-K. The Protec is a silica-based, and it's usually like 0, 0, 8, 10, 12, something like that. The last number is usually pretty high. But the thing about it is that it helps reduce stress on the plants because of the way it feeds them, so you won't get the burn and things like that. And in my backyard, I only have one plant or one tree that gets leaf burn, okay? And I don't know why, but it does. I've tried everything, and it still gets leaf burn, and it's a trident maple. And the thing of it is, I've got another trident maple back there, and it doesn't get any leaf burn. And everybody gets treated the same. So it's just a characteristic of this plant. So none of my plants get leaf burn, all right? So this stuff must be working. It must be doing something, and the foliage is always thick, lush, and full. So I like the regimen of this product, and it seems to be working very well. And they're very specific about how to mix it on the back, depending on how you fertilize, whether you use handheld fertilizing, you're taking it out of a bucket and pouring it on there, or you're using a Siphon X, or you're using an injector. I was looking for a method to get better water. Okay, our waters are so hard and they're alkaline and things like that. And you start seeing all that white junk around the bottom of your pot and all that kind of stuff, okay? And you know that things are just not going well. And all of that's from the salts in your fertilizer and the salts in your water. This does not clean your water, okay? It's based on a magnetic principle. Your water is negatively charged. What you're putting to your pipe is the positive side of the magnet. So this is the positive here that goes up against your pipe. And they tell you how to install them. It's really a simple I was looking for the website name on this thing, and I broke it off of the pipe. And so I figured, oh, what the heck, I'll just bring it in. Anyway, it just wraps around your pipe like that, and it's held with tie wraps or a screw or a bolt or whatever you want to do, type of a deal. I've been using this for the longest time. I have one on my main line coming into the house, and I have one on the hot water heater outline because that's where they say to put it, so I just put it there with the second one that I had, because they send you 2 sets like this when you buy them. And I would suggest shopping around once you do find this name brand. The company itself sells them for $2.99, all right? But I do know some people that have picked them up for under $200, all right, for 2 of them. I have very nice moss. I have no trouble growing moss in my yard, none whatsoever. Okay, I think this is a reason why I don't get leaf burn. It's another reason. And I've cut back on my watering over the years too, because I believe because of these things. Like I said, they don't clean your water. What they do is they cause your water, as it comes in and passes through the magnets, okay, to carry everything that's in the water more efficiently. That's about the only way I can put it, all right? So that things don't build up on your water pipes. Like, right. Your fertilizers, everything will be more efficient and work more efficient as you fertilize and as you water, all right? If you go to their website, it's an interesting website. They have a lot of information there about it, okay? And look under home, residential, and then also look under agricultural, and they explain all the various things there. And there's also part of it where they just go through and they explain all of the dynamics of the magnets and what they do. So it is kind of interesting. But I've gotten really good results with them. I've had them for a very, very long time. You know how your faucets, you get that little crustation that builds up around the little nozzles, you know, over a period of time from the interaction between the water and the metallic and stuff like that? I don't have it. It's completely gone at my house, okay? The dishwasher is completely clean. I don't have any rust buildup. I don't have any of the corrosion on the racks or anything like that. It's all gone, okay? So it's doing something, and it's doing it well, and I appreciate it because it's things that I don't have to replace, and so it doesn't cost me money. So this was a really great investment, all right? So I'm just telling you about it. If you're having some things, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than getting a deionizer, a hell of a lot cheaper than reverse osmosis, okay, and a hell of a lot cheaper than other water treatment methods. I'll tell you this about deionizers. People that use deionizers may be doing themselves a greater disservice than they are doing themselves a service. When I was working in Santa Ana, I had an incident where I had to go to this place that does water treatment. They made water softeners, you know, the reverse osmosis deionizers for chemicals, you know, for hospitals and things like that. And so I was talking to the gentleman because I thought, well, you know, maybe he can set me up, you know, with a nice deionizer. And he asked me what I was going to use it for, and I told him, and he said, don't want to do that. And I said, why not? He says, deionized water is 99 9/10 pure. Okay, that's why they use it to make pharmaceuticals. All right? Deionized water, paramedics carry it in their deals. If you've got a cut or a gash, they'll crack open the bottle and rinse you with it because it's so clean and pure. Okay? The other thing about deionized water, it is so clean and pure that it's very aggressive. It wants to take back everything that it lost. Okay? It wants to recapture all those minerals and everything. Last but not least, I'm going to talk real quick here about the soils. I introduced this stuff a long time ago to a lot of people, and the question came up, and I know there's some of the folks up here that use it because I think in Leela's class she's got a couple of guys that use this product, because I remember one of the gentlemen said something about it in a discussion that we were at one of her classes. This is diatomaceous earth, okay? Diatomaceous earth. Okay, I think we're all familiar. If you have a pool, you've probably used it in your pool filter. Okay, but this is in a granular form. It was used during the big oil spill in the Gulf to sop up a lot of the oil that was on the shorelines and stuff. Now, let me tell you the benefits to this. All right, it is weight-wise. I used to do this little demonstration where I'd always show this. Weight-wise, this stuff is 60% lighter than, no, not pumice. No, not akadama. The stuff that we dig up in the hills all the time. DG. It's 60% lighter than DG, and it's probably about 20% lighter than pumice, okay? It holds up to 60% of its weight in water, okay? Now, when you say that, it's not a sponge. Okay, this stuff is made of diatoms. You know what diatoms are? They're the little prehistoric little creatures that used to float around in the water, and they were trapped up in the, you know, as you know, the ocean receded and stuff. They were trapped in various areas, and that's the earth that's up there, and it's mined, and this is mined in Nevada. They're skeletons. They're microscopic skeletons that make this up, okay? So what it does capture the water, but it doesn't hold it. So every time you water, you're flushing, okay? The beauty of this, though, is because it does hold that water and does release it, it releases it into your soil, and it releases it so your roots can actually get it and obtain it, okay? It's not like some of the other amendments where that doesn't happen. Volcanic rock holds nothing, okay? It's just an aggregate. It holds absolutely nothing, all right? And it's very heavy. So, you know, something to think about. This is going to be a raffle prize here, these two items together. I mix it at a 50-50 ratio. in other words, a scoop of this to a scoop of the soil, and I've gotten very good results. When I take my trees out to transplant, I have a lot of surface roots. The roots are very fine. They're very fine hair roots. The other beauty of this is that because it does retain the water the way it does, your roots stay up at a higher level in the pot. When you go to yank this out to transplant, you have a bigger root mass up at the top, which means you can remove down at more at the bottom without damaging your tree in the course of transplant and not shock it. Okay? The other beauty of this stuff is when I take my tree out of the pot, I'm not having to do this to clean the stuff off of it. Okay? I'll let the tree go to a little bit to the dry side when I get ready to repot. I mean, when I say dry, I don't mean dry, I mean, but you know, if there's some humidity in there, I'll take it out and I'll shake it. The soil comes off the roots beautifully and doesn't damage the roots. Okay? All plus, plus, plus. I went to this only because I used to add, I still do, and I'll tell you why. I used to add earthworm castings and bone meal to my soil mixture whenever I would transplant, okay? And what I was using is I was using Home Depot's generic topsoil. Sometimes I would have to sift it, sometimes I wouldn't. It depended on the quality of the product when I got it. If you go to Home Depot and look at their generics that they have, 9 times out of 10, it's either made by Miracle Grow or it's made by Bear, okay? So you're just paying twice as much for a name brand than you are the generic, and you're getting the same thing in the generic as you are, okay? So if you flip the bags over, which is what I always do, you flip the bags over and you go, oh, their generic is made by Bear right now. And sometimes, oh, the generic is made by Miracle Grow, okay? So you're just getting Miracle Grow soil, sometimes at Home Depot, for $2.99, okay, or less, all right? It just doesn't have a bunch of sand in it, maybe like the Miracle Grow has, all right? But this has the earthworm castings in it, and it has the bone meal in it, fish bone meal in it, okay? So it's one less thing I got to throw into the soil mix, all right? I do use earthworm castings. Reason why, several papers that I was presented when I was from University of Redlands and from Cal Poly, okay, when I was doing these things up at Pomona. Earthworm castings will get rid of pests, okay? You sprinkle earthworm castings on top of your soil, you won't have any white flies anymore, okay? A lot of bugs will just go away, okay? Something about the earthworm castings that causes them, and they did a number of studies on them, okay? And plus you're getting a fantastic fertilizer at the same time, okay? It's just a great fertilizer. I'll just sprinkle a very thin layer over the top of my soil, okay? Over the top of the moss, and again, causes the moss to just go nuts again on top of everything else. And I'll put the castings on after I've watered really well, okay? Because everything is wet on top, and when you sprinkle that light little layer of earthworm castings on there, it'll take that moisture up from the top, okay, and then it'll settle in there so it won't wash off the next time you go to water, okay? But earthworm castings are very, very beneficial, okay? They're just nothing but plus, plus, plus to them, okay? And they're a great pesticide, natural pesticide.